Can you hear me? Very good. Just make sure that you're comfortable. Close your eyes. Maybe you have been carrying some thoughts today or some emotions. Leave all that behind and just look what is now. Not to suppress your emotions or your thoughts. But notice the expression they have in this moment. As a neutral observer. The present moment expresses itself in many ways. And into our field of consciousness comes emotional content, bodily sensations, thoughts. But all of those sensations, all of those things in consciousness are transient. You can have the belief that you are stuck in a certain emotion or in a certain view, but it always changes. And you can have the feeling that there is nothing to hold on to if you accept that. That this moment is very free. And it's common to have things that make you feel safe. Paradoxically, it can sometimes be fears or negative thinking. But it feels comforting because you're used to it. And to wander beyond those perimeters feels scary. But this spacious freedom is your nature. It's the natural space when you don't touch thoughts. So what happens when this silence awareness is allowed to unfold naturally? And you notice in your life how things unfold without effort and even without a doer. The first step in allowing that is to stay aware. Being a witness, noticing this very moment. You might be distracted by the idea of a person and the thoughts connected to that. But when you time and time again come into a state of witnessing, the importance of the idea of the person will start to diminish. This is not a philosophical belief. This is meant to be experienced. The mind can be in doubt. If you follow the instructions correctly. But if you're sincere, the egoic mind has no chance. notice that such qualities as gratitude comes naturally. It comes by itself when dissatisfaction goes. Just remember that you cannot get rid of dissatisfaction. It's not something you need to root out. It leaves naturally when you abandon the doer. At first, you need the conscious effort to stay as awareness. You might even get headaches from concentrating so much. But from that small initial effort, the mind becomes spacious. You notice it because there will be space between your thoughts. And the silence will start to come naturally. It's not a silence that you have to hold on to, even though initially you might have those kind of wants. But it is a silence to relax into, because even if it at first feels like effort is needed, there is no effort in this silence. It is your natural state. Everything comes from it. Everything falls back into it. It is sort of a stateless state. if you get lost in the content of your mind, you just come back. And even if the silence feels disorienting, or maybe even scares you, stay. See how everything moves. You can open your eyes, move your body if you need to. It's so easy to think that effort is what you have to play with. That you in some ways can be a good meditator if you just apply yourself. But there is a more subtle quality that plays a much larger role. And that is sincerity. That is your dedication to the practice. But the difficult thing with this is usually you can have a story that says, I am completely dedicated. But you can still not be all in. Some subtle fear, some things just keep you. Or that you're looking so much in the outside to fit in. This creates identity and separation. I might have told this story before, but at one point I talked to my guru. I told him that I wanted to dedicate myself to go to, to dedicate myself to go to an ashram full time. And I met with one group of people at one ashram, and I came back to Swami, and I said to him, I'm not sure about this ashram. I really want to dedicate myself to this. I want some place to live where all you can do is meditate. And I told him about the conditions of this ashram and what I liked and what I didn't like. And Swami noticed that I was a bit skeptical of going there. And he said to me, but how would you like the ashram to be? And I described it quite briefly and simply and said, yes, you can do simple chores and there should be a lot of space for doing your sadhana. And I don't feel at this other ashram they were so focused on working a lot. And when I'm telling Swami these things, I notice that I describe his ashram, where I already live. But I'm not 100% in because I'm looking somewhere else, to a bigger teacher, something that I thought would be more lasting longer. You understand? And I felt almost stupid. Because as you do when you realize that you already have what you're looking for. And after that point, I could be 100% in. And Swami started to treat me also differently. He challenged me much more. He was much more dedicated with me because I was all in. But I thought I was already all in. So that's why I'm saying it's hard to see. And he has shared this example to show you how subtle and how difficult it is to see your own ideas of what could be, what should be, how it could be better, how it could have greater longevity, how you do things for the long run, all these ideas. But the dedication is in this moment. And it's scary because it shakes your core, your idea of identity, your idea of who you are. And it takes a lot of courage to bow. To abandon the idea of that the I is first. But the more you're with it, the more you're with the impersonal awareness, it shows you that there is no point in just identifying and uplifting the I. And it will be natural to serve others, to give. But all these things always comes with their obstacles, with their small traps. Because there's so many people who put themselves down by giving. For that person, maybe for a time being, it's better not to give. And the difficulty is that we get blinded by our ignorance. We get blinded by the ideas of how to live a good life. And what is the right thing to do? All this. And the beauty of this existence is that it guides you, if you want it or not. If you walk around with your fears, however ignorant you might be of them, you will still meet them. They will knock on your door until you realize what it is. Be especially alert on things that seems to come and come again. Cyclic behaviors. Why am I always coming in this same situation? Why are people always doing this and this when I'm around? It is because the same things are projected. And when they go, it will just seem a lot more random. Because with these fears, there's also a locked-in expectations with them. We might not see it. We think it's normal. You will say, it's the situation of my life, perhaps. But it's there. And it's very easy to start because it's just start to notice what is happening in your mind. That is quite... Thoughts are quite... take a lot of space in our awareness. They're a big part of consciousness. And especially thoughts that that have words on them are easy to observe. The egoic mind might, after a while, get onto you if you start to be very alert of all the inner talk, and it will have thoughts without talking. But that just means it becomes more subtle. So watch the inner talk. I know it's not always nice, because you will also notice that the inner talk is not always so pleasant. But then you will have the possibility to observe. And at first it's great to do it when you sit for a meditation every day. But it's also possible when you're waiting for the bus or the train, when you're on your bike, when you're standing in line somewhere. Just come back. Notice thinking. And the mind might resist it at first and say, nothing's going to happen. And the mind is actually right. And that is the freedom. Because non-happening is freedom. Happening is often tension. It's trying. It's projecting. It's expecting. Yes.
But when you say happening, you mean happening through doing, or the experience of doing?
Yes. When I talk about happening in this context, it is as a doer. And I understand that intellectually it can be strange to grapple with, because it's so easy to understand it as I should be passive. But actually passivity is also a doing. It's a resistance of doing. So none of those things, to force activity and to resist activity, are both doing in the context that we're talking about here.
You mean the happening where there is no one that is engaged in the activity, just the witness of everything occurring?
Yes, because life is just happening. But the identification creates the idea of a doer. That my life is happening to me. You would talk in this sense, right? You would say, this is my life situation. This and this happened to me today. But those things are actually not personal. Can we talk like this? You understand? Yes. Even if you feel that you're really a victim of the circumstances of your life, and especially in a specific moment, say, that is still just a moment that is happening. And the universe will just happen. But there is a big difference if you are identified with the content of that happening as it is happening to you. In other words, making a doer out of yourself. And I know that this is what most people think is normal. Because that is the way people talk. That's how we talk about identity and who we are and what happened to me and my life and so on and so on. But that is not what is going on. all those thoughts are occurring, but they have nothing in them that automatically says, this has to do with me. That idea have to be believed in. The idea of being a separate person with a life that happens to them. Life is just naturally unfolding. As these words are spoken, there is no one doing them. There's no one identifying with them, figuring them out. When there is talking, there is listening. It's not actually talking. Does that make sense? So, the experience here is that there is talking, but there is no one behind the talking. There's not a talker. And usually when you refer to yourself, you refer to the idea of the person. And that is just another idea. It's like the idea of another.
I feel like many times I feel like it's almost like the only reason why everything is created so that it can experience individuality is so that it can experience itself through all these different various forms.
Yes. And the expressions are numerous. There are so many expressions of it. But the idea that all of those expressions are personal is just not true if you look at it. I understand that it can have the sense that there is something, that there is identity. And you say, but I have a sense that there is some kind of core, some kind of center. Yes. But if you can experience that, what are you experiencing that from? If you say that you can sense yourself, what is experiencing that? And isn't it more logical that you would be the thing being aware of the experience of the self, than the idea of self? It's not crazy complicated, but it's just out of the box for most people. So where do you get to if you look for yourself? This is a serious question. Where do you get to if you start looking for yourself? If you start looking for the center of yourself, where do you end up? And I mean to really look. It's not a philosophy. It's not a philosophical question. Look if there is you have a sense of I, right? Some sense of I. And you look at what that is. Is that a reoccurring idea? is it the idea of the identification with the body? What is the occurring theme of I? And what is that in experiencing? Not as a thought. What is it in your experience? Where is the I? Does it have a place? Can you grab hold of it? Can you touch it? How far away is it? And you might say, okay, when I do that, it just becomes spacious. I feel a bit confused and it's very spacious. So confusion is happening in that space, and so. It will always fall back into awareness. Because if the identity of a person should live on, it has to be believed in. Every time it says, this is happening to me. Oh no, now they called and they said this, now this situation is happening to me. Every time that occurs, you have to believe in the situation and you have to believe that you are a separate person. And then you feel like a victim of the situation. And just that we can talk about the mechanics of this makes it so much easier to be aware of it and to understand what is going on in it. But the work here is just to be aware of it when you notice it. And you can be with the idea, it's fine, that it feels logical to you, and maybe you have to think about it and all these things, so it can somehow internalize and feels logical to you if you're not so used to these kind of questions. But the revelation in it will be in witnessing. In being with it. And if these questions scare you, it's fine. It's also normal. Because this is question the core of the egoic mind directly. What we call self-inquiry. Returning to the idea of I. And see where you end up. when you follow this. You want to ask a question?
I get angry. Like I have anger coming up.
Yes.
Because I'm out here and interacting with this monkey mind.
Yeah.
And not maybe not listening or taking care of this one that is looking at it. So I'm like, why am I wasting 10 years of just running around like that? And
yes,
it's I got disappointed in myself. That's why I'm angry. Yeah.
But in that sense, meditation is not easy. Because, as you remember from my story, I also told you that I felt stupid. And also, when you realize certain things and you notice that you had an effort in another direction for a long, long time, which was completely faulty, that it was completely wrong, you feel stupid. It feels disappointing. You can feel angry. I remember when I first learned about meditation, I was so happy at first. And then it went for a while into anger towards my parents. Because I felt like, you should have taught me this. Why did I have to go into my 20s before I knew this? So all these feelings can be there. And you notice that certain patterns you had for a long time, that you were just stuck. So that is why the sincerity in us is important. Because you really have to want to know. It cannot be, if it's too superficial and you just want it to feel nice from your meditation, then you won't get very far. You can do certain techniques and you can just get stuck in that and it can feel nice. But there is no level of it where you really get to know yourself. And knowing yourself is not that you realize that you are something. It's actually that you realize that you are nothing. But it's a beautiful nothing. In that there is freedom. Because as you noticed in identification, there is always limits and there is always suffering. Because it makes you into something and then you have the consequences of being a someone, of being a doer. But even if you get angry about it or you feel disturbed by what you notice with it, it's also a great blessing to know instead of not knowing. Because when you don't know, you're just stuck. When you know, it can feel bitter, it can feel all these things. You can feel stupid. But you know. And I know that there's a lot of talk in meditation about patience and that it takes a lot of time. But sometimes it's just very quick and direct also. It just reveals itself quickly. Because you are sincere and you're very honest with yourselves. You try to look at things even though they're not comfortable or difficult. You still want to know. This is a beautiful quality.
I really like what you shared, and I can relate to that too. Like, I just had this revelation now that we sat here. The first time I remember having this feeling of like extreme sudden awakening, because I sincerely wanted to know. I was like, wow, it was such a long time ago. And then when I didn't find what I thought was myself, it really scared me, which threw me into, years of searching again, because it was so profound that it was so scary. And now I'm like, okay, this was why, it was so scary, because no one told me about it.
Yes.
But I remember also you talking about that you're really happy that you were such a bad meditator, that it took you like 10 years or something, because you tried, and all this trying also was needed. Like all of this like failing and not like being super engaged in the monkey mind, or being angry and scared and doing wrong. All of that is really a part of it too, right? It's that's also something really beautiful.
Yes, and it all unfolds as it should unfold. So if you have a certain temperament, or if you have a certain way, you can be stuck on things for a long time. And if we talk about something here and it really provokes you, that is a very good sign that there is something with it. Usually the mind will say, yeah, but I don't like this part of the teaching, or I don't like that aspect of it. But usually it is because something is poked. And you might not at first know what it is. You can be prejudiced about certain practices, or about the idea of faith, or bowing, or whatever it can be. All those things can be resistance. And I just want to be very clear with that you can have also a story that says, I am okay with this, but you're not. You understand? That there is still subtle resistance, even though the story inside says something else. Like I talked about before, that the story inside is, I'm 100% dedicated, but something is holding back because of fear, subtle fears, things that you don't really see, but are just in your tendencies. And all those things are fine. And they're not much of a problem if there's openness to it. But sometimes they can just get into a pocket, and you can be in a way that it will just take some time. But the more things fall away, if you're not interested in so many things, or distracted by so many things on the outside, then it will start to be very obvious when the same thing repeats itself. The more silent your mind is, if there is repetition, you will catch it much easier. So meditation is always most difficult in the beginning, because then it feels like there's 1,000 things. There's so many things repeating, so many tendencies, so many ideas of how I should approach meditation, or what I should do, or where I should go, and what is the right path for me, and all these kind of ideas. And the difficulty is when you cannot sort between those things. Because there can be something lacking in the practice, but it can also be that you're just stuck on the sense that something is wrong in you, which just can be the fragmentation of the egoic mind. And when these things are not clear, it's very difficult sometimes to know one from the other. But with the practice, and when the mind gets quiet, it just gets easier. Meditation is easier, easier, and easier. It's only bad news for the beginners. because after a while, there were also, it feels like there is a natural momentum to it. Like the silence has momentum. So you can feel completely lost, you can feel completely out of your practice, and you just touch with some situation where you just spend a little time by yourself, or you just do something that like puts it and it starts to roll so easily from that. The silence just comes really, really easy. And in the beginning, it's like, it really feels like Sisyphus, the guy who rolls the stone. And there is so much doubt to deal with, all these things. So in the beginning, it's just patience that is needed. And after a while, it's just to be very aware where you get stuck. And if you have awakening experiences, it's very common to be very, very scared with it and have the feeling, I don't want to go back to that. That is just a death and nothing. and at the same time, it's the most beautiful thing you ever experienced. So you're completely confused about it.
But the first time you have it, you think, this is it. This is when everything changes. But then it happens again and again and again. And it's like, it's not about that experience.
No.
It's not at all about it. And it's like you don't even seek it out anymore. There is no need to have that firework.
Yes. But it also only, that kind of experience only feels like fireworks when the egoic trance is there and it can fall. But it's still just an experience. And as soon as it is gone, it is just a memory of it, and then the relationship with that memory. But we so often confuse those pointers, those words or those memories. We confuse the sign with the place. We say that we think they're the same. So we look at the sign time and time again that says past, and we think that that is the thing. That is the fear that we...
I don't understand the analogy.
We make something out of the experience that we carry with us. And in this analogy, it's just we carry the thing with us. We take the sign that points to the fear, and we say, and we look at it, and we think that it is that fear that we experienced. And that is our relationship that the person has with the past. And it can just carry signs with it. All these pointers to these fears. All the things that are already gone. But we believe in them somehow. And we have a relationship with them. So we carry them. And the more profound the fear, the more important we think that it is to carry the sign. But it's not important. It's just a sign.
But can you talk about the analogy of, what happens, when you chop off the head, when it's a little bit when there's no real body? Because I don't know, I can't find the words today. But when you said sometimes, you have to be mature enough to be able to, like the head.
I didn't talk about this today. No, some other time.
You've talked about it other times, and you talked about it with me. But you usually say that sometimes, when we chop off the head, as in the analogy of like having that awakening experience too early, when there is no real body to chop off the head, then that will just be it's going to be too disorienting, and can actually take a lot longer time until, there's an actual physical idea of a self, and then you can chop off the head. Because if there's no idea of the self, a sense of like I to begin with. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
Yeah?
I know what you're talking about. But there is a question also of a well-formed ego. It has to be crystallized in some way. The egoic mind has to come to a point where it also feels steady. If it feels too much, if there's too much self-doubt, it needs some encouragement. And I think I've told this many times that Swami, he cut some people very quickly. They were a bit arrogant, and the ones that were a bit shaky, he always lift them up. Oh, you're doing great. And because it gets too harsh otherwise. If you're already doubting too much yourself and you cut too hard, it gets too harsh. You won't really go into it because it feels overwhelming. But if you feel like you're in a good place, and then it doesn't really have to be a good place either. It's just that you have a sense that your egoic mind is crystallized. And it can be terrible in some senses, because it is. But it just has to be well formed. It has to mature to a certain point. But it's also that if we cannot take it, we cannot absorb it really. You understand? We cannot go so deep into the inquiry if we're not ready. There will be too much resistance. It will be too much. And this chopping, it happens when we do things like today. We really go hard into, who are you? What is this core of you? When you go to the sense of I, what is it? What do you come to? This is the sword. Going for the core. And if you're not ready, you will feel a little bit that it goes over your head. Nothing really sticks with it. Because there's also a maturity with the egoic mind that you feel really tired of it. And then you're really ready also for the for the chopping. Because you have to have a sense that there is also no other way out. Because if the egoic mind feels like, yeah, but I could always sneak out to the left or the right, then it has to do that first. So the egoic mind that is really ready for this chopping block, it has come to the point where it feels like there is no other way. And it doesn't have the ideas of, if I only live out my dreams, if I only do this and this, I will be truly happy. It has to, and that's why I sometimes talk about this with the dreams, that I hope that all your dreams get crushed, jokingly, because that is also the sense of that the egoic mind starts to feel very limited. And I just want to underline that you don't always have to feel good with the ego in this. It can actually feel completely terrible, but there's no other way. That's a better way to put it. Any other questions today? And you might wonder, what do I need for my sadhana? And there is never one answer for that. What is the next step for me? And the strange thing is that it can be very much on the level of the relative. You might need something very practical. You might need to start to sing, make an altar. Not something very, very simple, very, very relative. And also other simple things that you might need an expression of your anger, your sorrow, whatever it is, and to find a space for that. But the beautiful thing is that if you connect with the awareness, it will just show you. It will always have this longing. It longs to know itself. And through that, it knows exactly. But it's just most of us do not trust that. This intuitive sense. Because it can seem so irrational and strange in its ways. So we go to what we learned, what is logical, all this. And you can practice it in very, very simple ways. You can just sit after you have eaten and watch yourself go. Instead of going with the thoughts of the idea of what you're doing, you just see what happens. If there's a lot of thoughts, it can feel confusing at first, but just stay with it and maybe take some time, and then you will just notice, oh, the body is getting up. It's doing. It's happening. And the same if you're out walking, you can just notice the body walking. The egoic mind loves the idea of all the time being somehow in control. But when you notice the things happening, it can just be, okay, I didn't know that I was going left here, but I'm going left. And you see what happens. But it takes some trust. And you will be a little bit strange when you explore it. One of my teachers told me that every time he came to a crossing, he didn't know which way to go always, and it took some time for him to just be connected to his intuitive sense. So he had a little notebook He didn't write anything, but so that he would just stand and look like he was doing something. So he could just stay for 5 minutes without feeling too straight. And then he closed his notebook again without writing. And then he knew that he was going left. And I know that you notice these things. And maybe you have other words for them. You say that certain days, everything just flows very nicely. And other days it feels very difficult, that everything is forced. And this is connected to the awareness. And it's connected to the idea of the doer, of course. And you notice it when you do the same things, identified or unidentified. Because it's never heavy when it's not identified. And it's always heavy. You can do really things that you enjoy, but they can feel like a heavy chore if there's too much ideas of what it should be. Too many expectations. And the joy of it is gone. Because what we enjoy is the present moment, not the thing. Yes.
Yes, so I'm thinking about my practice, and there's a longing to be more devotional, but I'm not sure what that would look like. So I'm just wondering what you have to say to that. And I also feel when you say sometimes that you really have to want to know, I don't. I just want to surrender everything. That's the longing. It's not about knowing at all.
No. But those things that we talk about, then you say, I just long for complete surrender. Okay, so what is the difference between knowing and complete surrender? It is just the expression from a jnana yogi and a bhakti yogi's point of view, but it is the same.
One of them lights up my heart.
Yes, but and usually we just have a tendency to come from one aspect of it and the other. But they meet at the summit. They are the same. That is the same longing. But interestingly, the bhakti and the jnani have completely different obstacles. Because they just view things a little differently. But there are so many things in the devotional and if there is spaciousness in you and there is this natural longing, there can be a natural longing to do seva, for example, to just serve others in whatever capacity there is. Christmas is coming up. There are so many shelters where you can volunteer and just give people food. All these things, if they resonate with you, do them. They can be such a beautiful practice. And for others, it can be that you need to dance and express and sing. That is your devotional. And sometimes what you need is not exactly how you think, because usually we have a disposition for something, and things that are opposite to that disposition can feel, oh, that feels very challenging. But sometimes that is exactly what is needed. And it's strange how it is presented. I know that I have told you that I had this resistance to things feeling too religious. And now I'm sitting here with Shiva on So you never know how the expression is going to be. But also usually for the bhakti, it's very good with these practices like self-inquiry, because they give a different flavor. Because it feels so natural and easy to just give myself to something greater. And to realize that that is also the same. That when you look for yourself and you notice the spaciousness, which is the godliness itself, the universe, and that is the practice of really bowing to it. It's just in other words. The words need to be a little more bhakti flavored. But then again, it's the same thing. And there are so many spiritual contexts where it feels so obvious to go to them if you're drawn to the bhakti, and it feels obvious to go to them if you're drawn to a more jnani, and they get separated. But I think it's beautiful if those things really can intertwine, because they need each other. They're two wings of the bird. The bhakti usually needs to question more, to contemplate more, because it's so natural to just devote yourself. But not only, it can also have full expression in the bhakti part. And for the ones who are more intellectual, that's usually the difficult one. They're challenged in the opposite way. But when you say that you're longing for it, what is it that feels unexpressed?
I think I'm longing for more context, bhakti context.
Mm.
practices together with other people.
Mm.
And also, when you said about dancing and singing, yeah, that resonates. And also, what also came up was that I could do my job in a devotional way. I forget that sometimes.
Yes.
I meet a lot of people.
Yes.
And it's very different if I come from a devotional place when I do it. But I had forgotten that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in the relationship to people is the easiest to go into identity. Then it's so easy to feel fear with certain behaviors, and all these things sneak up on you, and you feel you have to be guarded. Oh, I cannot open up too much here. I have to do all this. But it will make it so much easier, as you probably noticed also, if you're in complete service, because there's no identity that you have to relate to in it. You just know that. Yes. This is what should happen. And I've seen so many people who work in areas where they really have that longing and can express it in it. I was at the hospital and got surgery, and especially the people who was around the room where you woke up after the surgery, they were like complete bhaktis, all of them. They just wanted to serve, and they made everything so neatly. It was like a little ceremony around you. And they were just so happy with doing there. They really felt like they could just give. So it can be really, really magical in that, if that is allowed to. And not to be afraid of that. To feel like there is also the space to be expressed in that, as we're talking about now. Because sometimes in just also this idea of this selfless giving, there can be self-deprecation in it. It can make you very small. But it can also make you big. It can also make you full of love.
Thank you so much. I feel so relieved. And light.
Thank you.
Perfect.
And that is the best way to live your life. Like everything is sadhana. Because then everything is holy. And it's not difficult to do the things that are challenging or dirty or not so nice. They're also good because they're part of it. And if you embrace that naturalness of sadhana in everything, it will also, things will fall away that doesn't support that. Because you know what you want with your life. It is doing the sadhana. And if it's seva, if it's selfless service, or in whatever way it can be. good. Any more questions? No? No. Maybe we could sing something? So let's sing a real bhakti song. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come for me? Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come for me? Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Wilt thou come, just for once come for me? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my love? Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Night and day, I look for thee night and day. One more. Jaya Mata Kali, Jaya Mata Durga, Jaya Mata Kali, Jaya Mata Durga, Kali Durga, Namo Namah, Kali Durga, Namo Namah. Jaya Mata Kali, Jaya Mata Durga, Jaya Mata Kali, Jaya Mata Durga, Kali Durga, Namo Namah, Kali Durga, Namo Namah. Kali Durga, Namo Namah, Kali Durga, Namo Namah, Kali Durga, Namo Namah. Jaya Mata Kali, Jaya Mata Durga, Jaya Mata Kali, Jaya Mata Durga, Kali Durga, Namo Namah, Kali Durga, Namo Namah. Jaya Mata Kali, Jaya Mata Durga, Jaya Mata Kali, Jaya Mata Durga, Kali Durga, Namo Namah, Kali Durga, Namo Namah. Kali Durga, Namo Namah, Kali Durga, Namo Namah, Kali Durga, Namo Namah. Jaya Mata Kali, Jaya Mata Durga, Jaya Mata Kali, Jaya Mata Durga, Kali Durga, Namo Namah, Kali Durga, Namo Namah. Jaya Mata Kali, Jaya Mata Durga, Jaya Mata Kali, Jaya Mata Durga, Kali Durga, Namo Namah, Kali Durga, Namo Namah. Kali Durga, Namo Namah, Kali Durga, Namo Namah, Kali Durga, Namo Namah. to see you all.